For decades, scientists have dismissed it as a hoax, a grainy 1967 clip shot deep in a California forest. But new AI analysis just uncovered something no one expected. Hidden muscle movement, unnatural eye tracking, and heat patterns impossible to fake in the 1960s. The Patterson Gimlin film isn't just real. It might document something that shouldn't exist at all. Tonight, we're breaking down how artificial intelligence may have just proven the most infamous Bigfoot footage in history was never a man in a suit, and why that discovery has experts terrified to speak publicly. Make sure to hit subscribe, because what AI found in those 59 seconds will haunt you. It began on an unremarkable autumn afternoon, October 20th, 1967, in the dense wilderness of Bluff Creek, California. The kind of quiet, sun-dappled day when wind whispers through pine needles and every step feels like an intrusion. Two men on horseback, Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin, had been riding for hours. They weren't explorers, scientists, or filmmakers, at least not in the traditional sense. Patterson was a rodeo cowboy with a fascination that bordered on obsession. Gimlin, his reluctant companion, was a tracker and outdoorsman, skeptical but loyal to his friend. The story that followed would become one of the strangest in American history. Somewhere between the hush of the creek and the low rumble of their horses, Patterson spotted movement. He reached for the 16mm camera slung over his shoulder, dust still clinging to its worn casing. He didn't have time to focus. He didn't have time to think. All he could do was aim. The camera jerked, stumbled, then steadied, capturing a figure stepping into view. Massive, upright, covered head to toe in coarse, dark hair. Its arms swung low, its gait deliberate and smooth, unlike any man in costume. And then, the moment that would echo for generations, the creature turned. A slow, chilling glance over its shoulder, as if acknowledging the men behind the lens. That single look transformed a 59-second home video into the most dissected piece of footage in cryptozoological history. Skeptics laughed, calling it another American hoax, but the footage refused to die. Film experts, anthropologists, biologists, and even Hollywood costume designers all tried to tear it apart. Each time, they returned to the same unsettling realization. The creature in the film didn't move like a man pretending to be an ape. It moved like something else. When the clip resurfaced decades later in digital form, artificial intelligence entered the picture. Algorithms trained on millions of human and animal motion patterns ran the footage frame by frame. What they found wasn't trickery, it was anatomy. Subtle shifts of muscle under fur, weight distribution across joints, and natural gait symmetry that no costume could replicate. The more the technology improved, the clearer the creature became. For years, people assumed it was just another myth. But AI has no bias, no belief system. It doesn't want Bigfoot to exist. It only measures truth in data. And data doesn't lie. That's why the Patterson-Gimlin film, once mocked as a campfire joke, has now forced scientists to confront a terrifying question. What if the thing that stared back in 1967 wasn't just real, but intelligent? As Roger Patterson would later say before his death, "I know what I saw, and it saw me too." The film that was supposed to fade into obscurity has instead evolved into something else entirely. Not just a relic of the past, but a digital artifact of something the world still isn't ready to explain. Because what's buried in those 59 seconds may not just rewrite the story of Bigfoot, but the story of us. Roger Patterson wasn't a scientist, and he certainly wasn't rich. He was a painter, a rodeo cowboy, and a dreamer from Yakima, Washington. But there was something else about him that no one could ever quite describe. An intensity, a restless obsession with things that didn't fit neatly into the known world. To his friends, he was the Bigfoot guy, a man chasing ghosts through the mountains. To his wife, Patricia, he was a believer trapped between ridicule and revelation. It all began with a single book, Abominable Snowmen, Legend Come to Life, by Ivan Sanderson. Patterson read it cover to cover until the pages were worn thin. The stories of enormous bipedal creatures wandering remote regions of the world sparked something in him. He wasn't content to just read about it. He wanted to find it. In his mind, the forests of Northern California weren't just home to bears and elk. They were the last hiding place of a living fossil. He poured everything he had into his obsession. He bought plaster to cast footprints, borrowed film equipment, and even self-published a book in 1966 called Do Abominable Snowmen of America Really Exist? The local community laughed. Newspapers ran small pieces mocking him. But Patterson didn't care. He knew what he was chasing. And he believed it was only a matter of time before he'd see it for himself. That opportunity came in the fall of 1967, when Patterson convinced his friend Bob Gimlin to join him on an expedition to Bluff Creek, a remote stretch of forest that had long been whispered about by loggers and native trackers alike. Reports of huge footprints and strange howls had circulated there for years. Gimlin didn't believe any of it, but he respected Patterson's determination. "If he's going," he later said, "then I'm not letting him go alone." The two men set out on horseback with nothing but a rifle, a camera, and blind faith. For days, the forest offered nothing but silence and rain. Then, on the afternoon of October 20th, their search changed forever. They followed a creek bed that twisted through the trees when Patterson's horse suddenly spooked. Something moved just ahead, massive, upright, and watching them. Patterson scrambled for his camera while Gimlin steadied his horse, his rifle half raised. Then, through the lens, it appeared. A towering figure striding through the clearing, arms swinging with perfect balance, head turning toward the men as though sizing them up. "I can still see the muscles move beneath the hair," Gimlin would recall decades later, his voice trembling. "That wasn't a man in a suit. I know what I saw." When the film was developed, Patterson's hands shook. He knew the footage would change his life, but he didn't realize it would destroy it too. Accusations came instantly. "It's fake," they said. "He made it up for money." But Patterson never backed down. Even on his deathbed in 1972, as cancer consumed him, he repeated one final phrase: "It was real." Every second of it. And now, more than 50 years later, AI is proving that maybe he wasn't lying after all. Because when machines reanalyzed his footage, they found biological truths that even science couldn't explain away. Patterson's obsession wasn't madness, it was prophecy. And what he captured in those woods might be the closest thing humanity has ever had to proof of the impossible. There's a moment in the Patterson-Gimlin film that still freezes the blood of anyone who sees it. The precise instant the creature turns its head. That single frame, number 352, has become one of the most analyzed images in human history. Skeptics call it the smoking gun of a hoax. Believers call it something far more profound, the moment the unknown acknowledged us. For decades, analysts examined that frame with magnifying lenses and projectors. They debated shadows, fur patterns, and muscle shapes. But the argument never went anywhere. Because no matter how closely they looked, the truth was buried in the film grain. Then came the AI revolution. When modern forensic imaging software was unleashed on frame 352, everything changed. The footage was scanned at ultra-high resolution and run through an artificial intelligence system designed to analyze facial micro-movements, muscle flexion, and natural motion arcs. The algorithm was trained on tens of thousands of human and primate videos, meaning it knew, mathematically, how real muscle tissue behaves under skin. The result stunned even the skeptics. Beneath the creature's fur, the system detected subdermal movement, tiny shifts in the triceps, quadriceps, and deltoids as it walked. They weren't random patterns or wrinkles from a costume. They were the movements of living anatomy. The stride length measured precisely 41 inches. The mid-foot bend matched no known human gait, and the creature's hip rotation was beyond what a man in a suit could physically achieve. But what truly rattled researchers was the eye movement. A eye-based visual mapping tracked micro-blinks and ocular adjustment. The creature's eyes responded to sunlight glare, focusing momentarily on the camera. That meant awareness, intent, conscious recognition of being observed. Thermal reconstruction, generated from the light exposure across the film, revealed another anomaly. The head, chest, and upper arms radiated heat differently from the legs, exactly as in warm-blooded mammals. No costume could replicate that in 1967. No trick of the lens could fake it. One forensic imaging expert, interviewed off-record, admitted something chilling. If this was a hoax, it's one no one could reproduce today without advanced CGI. And they did it on film stock in the middle of nowhere. Even Hollywood weighed in. Creature designers compared the Patterson film to the era's monster suits, Planet of the Apes, Creature from the Black Lagoon, and other productions of the 1960s. None came close. Their masks were rigid, seams visible, movement clumsy. The figure in Patterson's reel flowed with organic precision. When artificial intelligence reconstructed the motion between frames, the illusion of life became undeniable. The weight distribution, the balance correction after each step. It was biomechanical perfection. Eye doesn't get fooled by myth or bias. It just sees data. And the data screamed one thing: this wasn't human. Frame 352 is no longer just a piece of old celluloid. It's a biological riddle, a frozen second in time where myth and evidence collide. And as AI peered deeper into those pixels, it found something even more disturbing. The creature wasn't afraid. It wasn't fleeing. It was studying us. That glance over the shoulder wasn't panic. It was curiosity. A silent question, buried in 16 millimeters of film grain. Who's really the observer here? When artificial intelligence first entered the world of cryptozoology, no one took it seriously. After all, AI was supposed to analyze traffic patterns, not Bigfoot films. But by 2024, that changed completely. Researchers from the University of British Columbia, along with a team of forensic analysts and motion scientists, fed the original Patterson Gimlin footage into a deep learning system built to detect biological authenticity in low-quality videos. What they found didn't just challenge old assumptions, it blew them apart. At first, the algorithm treated the film like any other clip. It corrected the frame jitter, stabilized the image, and restored the color tones based on Kodak's 1967 film stock profile. Then it did something human eyes could never do. It reconstructed the movement between frames that had long been lost to the naked eye. Using predictive motion analysis, the AI literally filled in the missing milliseconds between each shot. And suddenly, for the first time in history, the creature in the footage moved in full fluid motion. That's when the data started to scream. The AI detected something called mid-tarsal flexion, a subtle bend in the middle of the foot that only exists in non-human primates and early hominids. Humans lost that flexibility thousands of years ago. It also noted proportional anomalies. The arm length to height ratio was 20% greater than a human's, and the rotation of the pelvis was identical to that of known great apes. Every measurement contradicted the man-in-a-costume theory. To verify, the team ran comparative scans against motion capture data from human actors wearing suits. The results weren't even close. No human, even trained stunt performers, could replicate the way the creature's body shifted weight or absorbed impact. There were no frame skips, no costume folds, no mechanical inconsistencies. It was, in the AI's own binary logic, consistent with a biological organism. Then came the facial data. By magnifying the digital reconstruction 600%, the AI isolated muscle ripples across the jawline and orbital ridge, the faint twitch of skin as light struck the face. In 1967, there was no technology capable of faking that level of detail. But the real shock came when the system mapped the eyes. The pupils contracted when light glared off the creek water, meaning the subject had adaptive iris response. That alone placed it in the realm of living biology. One of the lead developers quietly admitted to journalists afterward, "We were looking at something alive. It wasn't acting. It was reacting." For the skeptics, this was unacceptable. For believers, it was vindication. But for scientists, it was terrifying, because it meant that somewhere in those dark Californian woods, in the autumn of 1967, something real was standing there. Something that shouldn't exist. And I hadn't just found proof of life, it had found intelligence. The more the AI processed the Patterson Gimlin film, the stranger it got. By late 2024, researchers at Carnegie Mellon had taken things one step further. They weren't just studying movement anymore, they were studying life. Using a deep learning system originally built for battlefield surveillance, they applied something called microvascular rhythm mapping, a technique capable of detecting subtle color fluctuations in footage to determine blood flow patterns under the skin. It was the same tech used by forensic investigators to confirm whether a video subject was alive, breathing, or digitally fabricated. When they ran it on the Bigfoot film, the algorithm flagged a pulse. At first, they thought it was an error, but across multiple frames, faint rhythmic variations were detected around the neck, chest, and temple areas. A biological heartbeat between 80 and 90 beats per minute. It was impossible. No costume could mimic it, not even with modern VFX. That's when the team realized what they were looking at wasn't just a shadow moving under fur. It was blood in motion. Then came the breathing data. Frame-by-frame thermal gradients, extracted from the film's color balance, revealed subtle expansion in the chest cavity every 1.4 seconds, again perfectly aligned with human respiration rates. "This is organic respiration," said Dr. Elena Rivas, one of the lead analysts. "It's not random pixel distortion." The subject was exhaling warm air, and the camera's lens caught it in the film grain. The algorithm didn't stop there. It began reconstructing the creature's internal symmetry: shoulder width, muscle fiber density, bone proportion. It compared those readings to every known species in the global zoological database. No match. Not human, not ape, not bear. Yet its overall physiology was evolutionarily consistent. In other words, it fit perfectly into the family tree, but in a place that shouldn't exist anymore. When scientists heard the results, many dismissed it as data overfitting. But privately, a few whispered about something else: a living relic. an unknown hominid species that had somehow survived extinction, lurking deep within uncharted forests. One AI specialist summed it up best. This isn't myth versus science anymore. This is evidence versus explanation. And while most of the academic world turned away, one lab in Finland decided to go further. They ran the film through bioacoustic resonance modeling, a method designed to detect subaudible sound frequencies created by muscle vibration. The results confirmed the pattern: a harmonic resonance consistent with living tissue. In short, AI had detected a pulse, a breath, and movement. 57 years after two cowboys rode into the woods with a borrowed camera, the machines that replaced human doubt were whispering the same impossible truth. Roger Patterson might have filmed something alive. And that left scientists with a terrifying new question. If it was alive then, what if it still is now? By early 2025, artificial intelligence had already proven that the creature in the Patterson Gimlin film displayed signs of life. But then, researchers began to uncover something far more disturbing. The film wasn't just showing something, it was recording something that human ears could never detect. When a group of acoustic analysts from Stanford fed the 1967 reel into an AI system originally designed to restore ancient audio archives, they discovered frequencies hidden deep in the film's magnetic hum. It started as background noise, the kind most dismissed as wind or camera interference. But when the noise was isolated and spectrally enhanced, the AI picked up a faint subsonic tone, consistent throughout the footage. The frequency hovered around 19 Hz, the so-called fear frequency, known to cause unease and panic in humans. Strangely, this frequency seemed to modulate each time the creature turned or moved, as if it were responding to its surroundings. Researchers were stunned. This wasn't random static. The waveform was structured, rhythmic, pulsing, almost communicative. It aligned with patterns observed in animal communication, specifically those used by elephants and whales to convey distance and emotion through infrasound. But here's the problem. The Patterson camera had no microphone capable of picking up subsonic audio. That meant these vibrations were strong enough to register through the film stock itself. One acoustics engineer called it a biological resonance event. Others had a simpler term, a sound the forest wasn't supposed to make. To test the theory, AI-generated acoustic simulations recreated the subsonic hum and played it in controlled lab environments. Within seconds, participants reported feeling anxious, disoriented, and cold. Some claimed they felt watched. The frequency had a measurable effect on the human nervous system, just like standing near a predator you can't see. And when the AI overlaid the sound's oscillation with the creature's movements in the film, a pattern emerged. The tone pulsed in sync with its steps. Each time it turned its head, the amplitude spiked. Whatever made that sound wasn't just alive, it was aware. The implications were terrifying. If the creature in Bluff Creek used infrasound to communicate or defend itself, that would place it among a very short list of species capable of manipulating sound for psychological or territorial dominance. The only others we know of are elephants, crocodiles, and certain apex predators that hunt by fear. Dr. Miles Kerr, the lead analyst on the Stanford team, broke protocol during a press interview. "I don't know if we found Bigfoot," he said, "but whatever's on that film, it wasn't silent. It was broadcasting. And maybe it still is." Suddenly, the mystery of the Patterson Gimlin footage wasn't just visual anymore. It had a voice. And for the first time, AI had given that voice back to something that might not be extinct. Something ancient, intelligent, and listening from the tree line. As 2025 rolled on, the AI revelations surrounding the Patterson-Gimlin film began slipping out of academic circles and into the public domain. At first, most people brushed it off, another scientific curiosity about an old hoax. But then a leaked white paper from a defense contractor changed everything. Buried in the report, which was quietly uploaded to an encrypted forum, were the results of a classified AI-run topographical analysis of the original Bluff Creek footage. The system wasn't designed to study cryptids. It was built for reconnaissance, capable of reading environmental cues down to the movement of leaves and shadow depth. What it found in the film wasn't just one anomaly. It was three. Behind the creature, partly obscured by trees, the AI detected synchronized movement in the background shadows. Tiny changes in light patterns suggested that two additional figures were moving in the distance. Their motions mirrored the central subject's direction, pace, and timing. They weren't random distortions. The data showed that three heat signatures, all upright, bipedal, and over 7 feet tall, existed in that clearing for at least 22 seconds. When the footage was cross-referenced with Roger Patterson's camera pan speed and lens depth, it was confirmed that the other figures were positioned approximately 30 to 40 meters beyond the visible frame, which meant something horrifying. The one Patterson filmed wasn't alone. The revelation ignited chaos online. Forums filled with speculation that Patterson and Gimlin might have interrupted a group, not a lone creature. Others suggested the two men were being watched from multiple directions. One AI researcher even reconstructed a heat map overlay that showed one of the hidden figures moving parallel to the cameraman, as if flanking him. The discovery put every old statement by Patterson and Gimlin under a new lens. When Gimlin once said, "I felt like we were being followed," many had dismissed it as adrenaline. But now, that line felt prophetic. And then another piece surfaced, an old interview that had barely been noticed before. In it, Gimlin described a strange silence that fell over the forest seconds before the encounter. "No birds, no wind, not even the creek," he said, like everything was waiting. AI analysis confirmed something chilling. The ambient audio flatlined right before the creature appeared, consistent with biological infrasound suppression, a natural quiet zone created when predators emit low-frequency energy to stun prey or mask their presence. That meant the creature's subsonic signal, revealed earlier by Stanford's AI, wasn't random noise. It was a field effect, a phenomenon used by advanced predators and known apex species to control their environment. The scientific community went quiet. The mainstream media ignored it. But behind the scenes, tech companies and government researchers began quietly acquiring private footage from other alleged Bigfoot encounters for digital restoration. If the pattern of multiple entities and subsonic fields repeated in any of them, it would confirm something unthinkable. Bluff Creek wasn't a one-time event. It was contact. And while AI continued to unravel 1967 frame by frame, the same system started monitoring recent wilderness footage from drones and hikers across North America. Within weeks, it detected a nearly identical movement signature, this time recorded in 2024 near Mount St. Helens. The creatures in the shadows of Bluff Creek hadn't disappeared. They had simply moved. And now, I could see them. Weeks after the Mount St. Helens footage surfaced, the AI that had once analyzed the Patterson-Gimlin film did something no one expected. It detected the same subsonic pattern live. A low 19 Hz pulse, identical to the one buried in the 1967 reel, began appearing in wilderness microphones across Oregon, Washington, and Northern California. Each time, the pattern lasted less than a minute before vanishing. Authorities blamed seismic noise. But when technicians isolated the signal, its rhythm matched a heartbeat. Wildlife cams in those regions began showing strange distortions, brief flickers, tree movement with no wind, figures vanishing between frames. The AI flagged these as cryptobiological anomalies. It was as if the 1967 recording hadn't been a one-off encounter, but a transmission, one that had gone quiet for decades, until now. And this time, it wasn't waiting to be filmed. It was answering back.